Welcome everyone. We're really delighted that you could join us for today's talk, which is GIS for Managing and Protecting Cultural Heritage Resources with Giorgi Khaburzania from the National Agency for Cultural Heritage Preservation of Georgia. So today's talk is the penultimate in a series of seminar presentations we have called GIS from the Ground Up, Introducing Geospatial Tools for Archaeological Research. So if you haven't joined us over the last few weeks, then today and next week, we'll have a different scholar of archaeology, heritage, and/or GIS in the South Caucasus, presenting on a different GIS technique, focusing on how it contributes to research questions. We welcome audience members of all levels of GIS experience, but the aim of each presentation is to introduce scholars unfamiliar with geospatial methods to the anatomy of a GIS-focused research project, an element of GIS research design through real-world case studies. So just a reminder that next week, our seminar presentation will feature Dr. Ian Lindsay from Purdue University, who will be talking about mobile GIS that's our next talk, isn't it? Yes, we'll be discussing mobile GIS, collecting GIS data on archaeological survey. I had a moment there, I thought maybe we had another talk, but we don't. It's definitely going to be Ian, and you should all come. So you can register for that seminar on ARISC's website at www.arisc.org. So before we get started, we wanted to acknowledge that this series is co-hosted by the American Research Institute of the South Caucasus, ARISC, the Endangered Archaeology in the Middle East and North Africa Project, AMINA, and the National Agency for Cultural Heritage Preservation of Georgia. And funding for the series is provided by the U.S. Department of State's Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs through a grant to the Council of American Overseas Research Centers. So I now have the pleasure of introducing today's presenter, Giorgi Khaburzania. So Giorgi is a senior specialist in the Information Systems Unit of the National Agency for the Cultural Heritage Preservation of Georgia. Giorgi has been involved in various surveys and excavation projects and is an expert in GIS and database applications for cultural heritage. Currently, he's in charge of developing the National Cultural Heritage Database in Georgia and conducting training for its users. He's also involved in a new project funded by the UNESCO Participation Program for 2020-2021 called Development of State of Conservation Reporting and Document Systemizing GIS-based Tools for World Heritage Sites Monitoring System in Georgia. And that project is developing a service on their cultural heritage portal, which will allow users to directly compile and send information to the agency on threatened heritage sites. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Giorgi Khaburzania.
Oh, thank you, Krista. I will try to share my screen now. Okay, that's it. Okay, do you all see the presentation? All right. Well, thank you very much for such an amazing presentation. And thanks for all the organizers for such a great event. I've been on each seminar like before, and all of the topics were extremely interesting. And it seems that GIS is quite widely used in cultural heritage in its research, management, protection, in diverse fields of cultural heritage. And the topic that I'm going to talk about is about just a little part of culture, how we use it for cultural heritage management and protection. And actually, I wanted to mention that it was just yesterday when like whole world celebrated GIS Day, and I just got this information. So I'm just one day late, but happy GIS day, like to all of you. So the topics that I will be talking today are this, well, one of the main things that we've been working over the years, like with the GIS team information systems unit, is the creation complex database system for all material cultural heritage, and also creating GIS portal for public use to allow anyone to have access on cultural heritage data. Another thing I will be discussing today is a little bit smaller scale study which we've done on Varzi area, and to extend its protection zones and to guarantee its protection. We've done some analysis to extend its visual and physical protection boundaries, and I will be talking about that in details later. And another thing is that we've been it's been last year, like agency has created quite a massive group of experts, like in different regions, to monitor and do site inspection of all cultural heritage monuments in their areas. So I tried some of the GIS analysis to properly understand how their kind of monitoring areas should be spread and divided. So I say it is just trial project, and I will just mention some of the GIS tools that I have used, to really understand what they are covering and how effective their areas might be effectively divided. So first thing that I mentioned, it's about the database that we've been working since 2013. This project started in collaboration with Norwegian Cultural Heritage Directorate. And we aim to develop a system for material cultural heritage that will allow all the users all over the country, and not only countries, through internet all over the world, to have an access on Georgian cultural heritage data. And we try to cover all material cultural heritage, and this were our prior goals, to give an access to all the experts, students, whoever wanted to use the cultural heritage data, and to give them information about their locations, about their typology, descriptions, what kind of protection zones they have in their surroundings, and etc., etc. And the system is quite complex, it quite combines some really different components of all material cultural heritage.
Sorry, Giorgi.
Yep.
We can't see your slides advancing.
You don't see it?
Well, we can see the slide, but it's not in presenter mode, and the slides aren't advancing. So maybe could you try restarting the PowerPoint?
Now?
It moved one now, but it's.
So, which one? It's a beginning, and it's a set slide. You see the one.
Now we can. Now we can. It wasn't moving before though. So.
Oh, all right.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. So, and since then, we started it in 2013, and every time we have this presentation, we are updating the dates. We had this firstly from 2016, then to 18, and then well, I decided not to mention ending date because we have so many upgrades every time that it's really never-ending process. And the ideas, it's already third version of public portals that we have now, and second version of backend administration database. This is the main team with whom I'm working almost since the beginning, we all are together, and we are main administration team for this database. And Leila is the head of our unit, and she was head of the unit since its creation, actually. And like this is the team who is developing like all the ideas how this database should move forward and in which direction we should improve the system to make it more flexible and usable for any user in cultural heritage. This is the structure that we have in our database, and we are covering all these components. So we have immovable monuments, movable ones, activities, and within the activities we mean all the like archaeological and like excavation, surveys, also restoration, conservation activities, all the activities that can be about the cultural heritage. Also, we are covering protection zones, also, of course, documentation museums, museum reserves, and all these are quite intensively are connected to each other.
Sorry, Giorgi, we're not seeing the slides advancing. Could you maybe stop sharing your screen and try sharing again? It might be that you're sharing the wrong screen or something.
Probably. Is it better now?
No. Could you stop sharing and then share again?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
We just don't want to miss all your amazing slides.
Yeah. Let's see. Do you see the PowerPoint now?
So we see we don't see the presenter, the slideshow view. So maybe
What about now?
Do you have more than one screen?
Let me see. Okay.
When you share, make sure you don't just share the PowerPoint application. Make sure you share the entire screen that it's on, because sometimes that can make a difference.
Okay, yeah, let's try that.
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right, so so you see all the arrows that I see here. So all these components are connected quite closely to each other. So in case of immovable objects, like they might be connected to the movable ones, as like, for example, during archaeological activities, they were recovered on that site. And so we have access to, we have possibility to link all these components to each other. And I will explain it more in depth on later slides. Okay. Yeah. So this is a look of our public portal, and of course we tried on last version to develop a mobile responsive site as well, which is quite important, and it's, as it seems like mobile use is quite growing, and it's even more than like this desktop use of like searching anything in via internet. So on the right side, you see just how it looks on mobile version, and on the left, it's on desktop side. And of course, like every component, what is important has a map on it, even like movable ones, movables, wall paintings, stone carvings, and etc. Because all of them are spatially connected to some object. In case of immovable ones, they are connected to the sites where they were found, for example, and to the museums where they are located. And the way we are, like we have lots of ways of searching within the database. Almost every field which we have built inside is searchable, and you can search with name, variety, period, function, and type, status. And these are mainly drop-down menus which we created with the help of the experts in cultural heritage, and try to standardize it as much as it is possible. And this is one of the example how all these things are connected. Like, for example, this is one of the sites in Western Georgia, Kalakevi, on which we have made a trial. First, it was the first site on which we started filling compiling the database. And here you see, like, it has a links, so like, as it is complex site, it has a links of other immovable cultural heritage sites within its area, because it's quite a huge complex fortification. And it has also links with movable objects which are allocated in the museum just next to the site. So with the help of just like going into one of the objects, you can see which movable, immovables, even museums activities are connected to each other, and you can go and see those objects. For example, which sites are on its complex area, and which are movable artifacts excavated during the excavations of like many years. And here are some protection zones which are defined by cultural heritage law. So any user who goes to the portal can see what kind of protection zones there are, and in which areas, what kind of regulations there might be. And this is, as Mtskheta is in UNESCO site, it is buffer of UNESCO of Mtskheta. So this is some statistics that we have so far in our database, like that we have reached since like 2013 until now. And almost all of them are gathered during like all the projects that were done before we started working on the database were integrated into the system. And also we use some archival data, because agency holds quite extensive archive of documentations where are allocated documents from around 1930s. And these are documents of identity cards, old images, drawings of all cultural heritage objects. And they were, firstly, there was a database of it. It has database of its own, and then we decided to integrate in one system. So within the GIS portal, on different access roles, of course, users can have access on archival data and new archival documents and new documents as well. And some of the objects are integrated from some journals, books, encyclopedias. We tried to create a tool which will help then anyone who wants to get an idea what kind of cultural heritage exists in different regions, and to try to cover most of the materials that exist in libraries, archives, old projects, and even we used online resources. And some of the sites are just placed on the map with an approximate location of a settlement, like village or city, as they did not have any precise coordinates. And after the like field experts, like who go on the field and do survey, they know in advance what kind of sites they might have in those areas. And then they go and take exact GPS coordinates, and then they update the data. So that was the first decision, like to put all the data in one system and then correct it as much as it is possible via aerial images, old topo maps, and etc. And yeah, this is a graph that you see that since 2015 up to now, we have almost 21,000 sites. So the use of the database is quite extensive, and it has lots of its scenarios. One of the uses and one of the main use is like to compare like how to say cadastral information with cultural heritage areas, their protection zones, and their actual areas, because there are lots of, like, especially in the cities, every time we get requirements that like someone wants to develop some area, and then they need to know like which areas have might have a cultural heritage, and they might be under some protection zones as well. So they should know regulations, and without the database and without this GIS portal, it would not have been possible. So for now, we have the tool like to properly really manage cultural heritage and to help urban developers to properly develop the areas and to protect the heritage and avoid like disturbing some areas where it might be valuable, like for in the sense of heritage. Another thing that I wanted to mention, like there are two really big projects going on now in Georgia, and one is building national spatial data infrastructure, which is initiated by National Agency of Public Register of Georgia, and it aims to create a platform, a portal where all the state organizations will be posting, like uploading their own spatial data. So all the state organizations like Ministry of Cultural Heritage or National Agency of Cultural Heritage, or like Ministry of Environment and Agriculture, all of them will be asked to put all the data in this portal, and we all have access on it. So that will change a lot. Anyone in future who will need to have an access on cultural heritage data as a GIS service, they will be able to go on the portal and just download from there and have it in, like, for their own any purpose. And another big project is which is just last year started, as I recall. It's developing like multi-hazard early warning system, and this is for like they will be working on like how to say landslides, like to develop different kind of maps for landslides, like snowfalls and etc. etc. And overlapping cultural heritage data over their data, it will give us really important information to properly then understand which cultural heritage sites might be under the threat of natural hazard. So another project that I wanted to talk about, it's like in 2019, like we tried to develop, to extend cultural heritage zones for Khaburzania rock art complex. This is quite amazing site, and it's actually the place where I met quite most of you probably who I know from those conferences or from different projects, because I've spent quite lots of years like doing projects in this area. But the main thing, like main goal for us was to extend its protection zones, because it was, as a cultural heritage law says, like every cultural heritage site, and especially if it is national significance, it has around 500 meter visual protection zone. But as far as the valley that you see here is quite extensive, it was not even enough to cover the whole valley. And if someone has decided to build something just behind the 500-meter boundary, it still should have been under visual perspective of the site. So these two slides just show you to understand how extensive the valley itself is, and it's a view over the Vardsia and view from the Vardsia itself. And this was our goal, to protect this landscape. And how to protect it. It is to extend some of the protection zones that were existed there. And they were looking like this. So even before, we did not have an outline of the Vardsia, and during the project we outlined it and we define its kind of extent. And then when I said it has automatic protection zones like this, yellow one, is kind of automatic protection, visual protection zone, which is not enough to get to the edge of the valley. So what we decided to do was that we've done visual viewshed analysis. And we place all these points here, and we calculated viewsheds from all of these points. And the digital elevation model that we used was given from public registry again. And it was quite detailed, because they have taken new aerial images in somewhere 2016-17, and the digital elevation models that we had was really good comparing to the open source ones that are available widely. And also to understand what is intervisibility, on the south here you see this is the edge of the plateau, Giorgi plateau, but still it's not enough to have a line on the plateau itself, because there are some houses, and if you see on this slide just below, it's quite hard, but still you see some of the roofs of the houses. So it really requires to extend its protection zone, and anyone who decides to build something, even in those villages like Accompanying and Khaburzania, they should be asking for a permit, and the unit responsible on that should be discussing this kind of topics as well. So that's why we also did some viewsheds from the edge as well, and then we've done several viewsheds just not from the edge, but 50 meter besides the edge, then 100 meter besides the edge, and we were giving it around 10 meter offset. So that allowed us to understand from which point you could actually see what's there, and how much higher building should be to actually see the Vardsia behind the edge of the plateau. So that's why these lines that you see here, we extended its visual protection zone this far to protect its kind of landscape as much as it is possible. Another topic I wanted to mention, it's about defining let's say, areas for inventory and monitoring teams, which are located in different regions of Georgia. And the things that I thought we should take in account was we should take in account density of cultural heritage, number of cultural heritage resources in those areas, because some may have thousands and some may have 100, and it's not kind of logical distribution between them. And also distance from its boundaries, because they should have at least its boundary should not be farther than 3-hour car drive, possibly. That was my first thought in the beginning. and overlap of these areas, how much they overlap to each other, and accessibility to like cultural heritage from road distance, how far from the edge of the road these cultural heritage sites are. So these were kind of questions like that we like thought about, and we started to doing some analysis after that. Firstly, like the analysis that I've done was I calculated the distance between the roads, all the road infrastructure, and two cultural heritage points that we have in our database. And it turns out, luckily, that most of them are quite closer to the road infrastructure, like around 17,425 are within 200 meters distance to the roads. And just few of them are over like 32 are just over the 2.5 kilometers. So that might require quite a walking probably. Any surveyor or inventory monitoring specialist might need a day like to get an access on those sites. It also depends on the landscape, of course. And another thing that I've done was to kind of understand how densely these cultural heritage sites are located to each other. And I did some analysis, which it's called like aggregate points, and that helps you to kind of build up polygons within the some predefined proximities that you tell it like how closer these sites are to each other. So these polygons, like this red polygons that you see, these are of 500 meter proximity to each other, and then I did of 1 kilometer, and then like 2.5 kilometers. So in future, if someone decides, like for example, like to plan a trip, like to do inventory in the area, and they know that these sites within the area are quite closer proximities, it might help them to properly plan their kind of field trip. And as they know that some sites are quite closer to each other, it may require less time to do inventory, and some sites who are just spread quite extensively, that may require more time and more resources. And also then I try to calculate how many sites are within each kind of these polygons. And here you see this density, like in blue ones, they are around more than 100 up to 250 sites, and like in white ones, they are like from 3 to 10. So this again helps in future, like to an expert, like to understand like how much time it will require to cover the area for inventory or monitoring on any activity. And finally, that I've done, like it's quite complex, and I will not be describing it here in details, but it's called network analysis, and it's quite helpful, like to understand, like from this center, like you just take any point where your inventory team is allocated, for example, how much area, according to the road infrastructure, will be able to be covered within some hours. Like this one is, for example, like down, like blue one is from Accompanying, like 2.5 hour like drive area. So this is the extent that may help you in future, like to then decide which areas they should be covering, and is it really manageable, like to cover those areas or not. So these were just some of the examples that we've been doing like this years, like working on to properly manage and protect cultural heritage sites. And I'm happy to hear your questions or comments.